Tonight, you're gonna cook dinner. Maybe you'll turn on a stove, maybe fire up a grill. It'll take you 30 seconds. You won't think about it at all. But there was a moment, a single moment, somewhere in the deep past, when one of your ancestors touched fire for the very first time, not to cook with, not for warmth. They had no idea what it was. All they knew was that it could kill them. And yet, something made them reach toward it anyway. That decision didn't just change their life. It changed the entire trajectory of the human species. Some would argue that the discovery of fire was the beginning of civilization. Every meal you've ever eaten, every city ever built, every idea ever written down, all of it traces back to that one terrifying moment of curiosity. So what actually happened? How did a frightened, fire-avoiding primate become the only creature on Earth that learned to control it? The answer is stranger, slower, and more accidental than you've ever been told. Let's go back. Not to ancient Greece, not to the earliest civilizations. Much further, about 1 million years ago, in a cave in the northern Cape of South Africa called Wonderwerk Cave. This is the earliest solid evidence we have of controlled fire use by human ancestors, specifically Homo erectus, a species that had already been walking the earth for nearly 1 million years. They were not quite us. Their brains were smaller, their foreheads were flatter, but they were smart enough to do something no other creature had ever done. They kept a fire going. And that's the part people miss. The discovery of fire wasn't a single eureka moment. It wasn't one genius sitting under a tree. It was a process that took thousands of generations. For most of that time, fire wasn't made. It was stolen. Lightning would strike a dry savanna and start a blaze. Volcanoes would spit flame. And your ancestors, instead of running at some point, they stopped. They watched. Then they took an ember and carried it. That was the first act of fire control. Not creating it, just not letting it die. Think about what that required. You had to overcome every animal instinct in your body. Every other creature on Earth runs from fire. The smell of smoke triggers panic in primates. But somewhere along the line, Homo erectus began to suppress that panic. They began to see the fire not as a threat, but as a tool. Scientists aren't entirely sure how long that psychological shift took, but the physical evidence suggests it was gradual, scattered across different populations across Africa and possibly Asia over hundreds of thousands of years. But here's where everything changes. Fire didn't just give your ancestors warmth, it rewired their biology. In 2009, primatologist Richard Wrangham at Harvard University published a book called Catching Fire: How Cooking Made Us Human. His argument was radical at the time. He proposed that cooking food made possible only by controlling fire was the single most important event in human evolution. Not tool use, not language. Cooking. Here's why. Raw food is hard to digest. Your body spends enormous amounts of energy breaking it down. Cooked food is pre-broken down. The calories are more accessible. Your gut doesn't have to work as hard. And when your gut doesn't have to work as hard, it can shrink. And when your gut shrinks, the energy that was feeding it gets redirected to your brain. Wrangham calculated that cooking could have provided the caloric surplus needed to fuel the dramatic brain expansion seen in Homo erectus and later in Homo sapiens. You are, in a very literal sense, a product of cooked food. Your brain is the size it is because your ancestors learned to use fire. And that brain didn't just grow, it began to change how it worked. Because fire did something else that nobody talks about enough. It extended the day. Before fire, when the sun went down, life stopped. You found shelter and you stayed still. Moving in the dark meant death. Lions, leopards, hyenas, they could all see in the dark. You could not. But a campfire changes that equation. A ring of light roughly 10 meters in diameter where predators will not enter. Inside that ring, for the first time in primate history, your ancestors were safe after dark. And safe after dark meant something extraordinary. It meant free time, 2 to 4 extra hours every single night that simply didn't exist before. What did they do with it? They talked. They sat together in the warmth and the glow, and they began to do something uniquely human. They told stories. Anthropologist Polly Weisner of the University of Utah spent years studying the Juhoanzi Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert and published her findings in 2014. She recorded and analyzed hundreds of conversations, comparing daytime talk to nighttime firelight talk. During the day, 80% of conversations were practical hunting, logistics, resource disputes, social complaints. But at night, around the fire, 81% of conversations were stories, myths, adventures, tales of distant places and imagined futures. Wisner concluded that firelight was where human culture was born. The campfire was the first classroom, the first theater, the first place where humans sat together and imagined something beyond the immediate moment. That capacity to imagine things that don't yet exist is arguably what separates us from every other species on the planet. And it didn't come from our DNA alone. It came from long nights around a fire, with nothing to do but think and speak and listen. Stories do something that raw experience cannot. They allow one mind to enter another, to feel grief without having suffered loss, to understand danger without having faced it. That is the foundation of language, of empathy, of everything we call civilization. And it was born not in a library or a lecture hall. It was born around a fire, in the dark. But fire gave us something else too, something that cut both ways. It gave us community, but it also gave us hierarchy. Controlling fire meant power. Whoever maintained the fire held something precious. Anthropologists believe that fire became an early organizing principle of human groups, a center around which roles formed, responsibilities were assigned, and social structures began to take shape. The fire wasn't just warmth, it was authority. And then, very slowly, humans stopped just keeping fire alive and started making it. The oldest confirmed evidence of widespread, consistent fire use dates to around 400,000 years ago, when archaic human populations were already building hearths across Europe and Africa. By the time anatomically modern humans emerged, roughly 300,000 years ago in Jebel Irhoud, Morocco, identified by a team led by Jean-Jacques Hublin at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in 2017, fire was not a discovery anymore. It was a given. It was as fundamental to human life as language. And here is the thing about fire that doesn't show up in any history book. It didn't just change what humans could do, it changed what humans were. The anatomy of your face, your small teeth, your short jaw reflects a species that stopped chewing raw, fibrous food hundreds of thousands of years ago. The size of your brain reflects the caloric surplus that cooking provided. The very way you process story and meaning and community reflects those long nights around a fire, when there was nothing to do but talk. You carry all of it with you, right now, in your body and in your mind. Every time you sit around a table with people you love and share a meal, you are reenacting something your ancestors invented 1,000,000 years ago in the dark. You didn't just inherit their genes, you inherited their ritual. And it all started with one terrifying, impossible, world-changing decision: to reach toward the flame instead of running from it.